the belief in America that we were all sold, told, pledged our allegiance to every morning as children, that's one conception of reality.
All right, everybody, Lily Pod number 2 coming at you. In part 1 of my Interesting Men Talk with Uninteresting People series, I have Nate Kosted. Nathan Kosted is my guest today. I'm not sure which one of those I would be. Kind of depends on your mood on that one, Nate. But welcome. How are you?
Doing well today, Chris. How are you?
Good. We are flanked by a second guest, my 3-month-old puppy, who is part Mini Bernese and Poodle, a Bernedoodle. So I'm officially in that category of person. My next step will probably be getting a timeshare in Myrtle Beach and getting excited for Ice Cube family movie night. Any of those "Are We There Yet" type things.
Did you see that?
I'm trying to say I'm uninteresting now.
Did you see that Ice Cube did both the World Series for the Dodgers and opening day? And I don't know how I feel about it. Did you see that at all?
What do you mean did?
He did. It actually, the show was really fun. So he started walking in from the outfield to home plate and he was rapping one of his singles.
Cop Killer? No, that was Ice-T.
I don't remember which one because it was live, so it was like not as great as a studio version. Yeah. But I remember being very impressed that it was occurring. I was excited.
Was it during the stretch or something?
No, this was pre Game 1 of the World Series, and they did it for opening day after they won the World Series too. It was I thought it was really cool that they would have him do that. As a Los Angeles icon.
Yeah, is he an icon?
I think of that community. I can't speak for it, but I haven't even seen the film.
What?
Straight Outta Compton, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he produced that. Movie's good.
Is it? Yeah, I've been meaning to watch it.
His son is a dead ringer for him, and it's just really, it's a fun movie to watch. Of the rap movies that came out in the last, 20 years, I'd say it's at the top. I didn't even watch the Tupac one. The Biggie one, called Notorious, was pretty good. I don't know, what other rap movies came out?
I feel like there have been more, but I can't remember.
Yeah, of those three, it was the best. Ice Cube has, I don't really have him in my discography a lot, but I'd say It Was a Good Day is a top 5 rap song of all time. It's one that even most office secretaries are able to say, oh yeah, I know several verses or words.
I feel like his importance is that his ability to cross over into the, mainstream.
Into white world. It's white world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like he opened the door for others.
Who's crossed over since then? I guess Common was a crossover. The Roots guys. I was actually kind of surprised that they took that gig with Jimmy Fallon, who's a noted cornball. But, the Roots are... Questlove is probably... I don't know. I don't want to get into list making, but he's a...
I try not to judge Questlove for that, because I feel like Jimmy Fallon was a known quantity, and what he's done on the show is below even his known quantity levels.
When he moved to Tonight Show, he changed. He had sort of a cultish style, Conan style show when he was that second slot. The Late Late Show, he used to have funny bits a guy in the audience that would talk about astronomy, and then he'd say, Hubble got you.
Oh,
remember Hubble got you?
Oh, I loved Hubble got you. I still say that to this day.
Yeah. It's this long Wikipedia first paragraph entry about some quasar, and he's this real, a guy that lives above 110th Street type guy, Yankees flat brim, all blue to the side a little bit.
Oh, is it Patrice O'Neal or something?
It looks exactly like.
Oh, okay.
Patrice was above that, I think.
Yeah.
A small bit actor, but it's exactly what I'm trying to explain. Just a bigger dude, black dude, funny.
I loved that.
But Fallon, he just slaps his desk and guffaws at a marginally interesting Emma Stone anecdote. Not even Emma Stone. She's an eminent actor.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's somebody, a C-lister will get the same table slapping reaction that like a Louis C.K. anecdote would get. And it's sort of like the Netflix rating system or like Airbnb rating system. Like pass, fail, make, miss. Like it's either good or bad.
He's his own laugh track and it's pathetic. Yeah. I can't watch it. He does have good music, and Questlove, like, to get back to that, like, you know, the paycheck is good enough. You can't hate.
Yeah, it's a smart business decision for sure.
But it opens his doors for his life. And, you know, have you read any of his books?
I didn't know he was an author.
Yeah, he's written a number of books, history of music and other stories like that. I purchased one for one of our mutual friends. You know, the decisions we make in this modern world, like, it's hard to judge others when they have those sorts of opportunities and they can make their lives better and enrich others. Like, I understand, and working with a hack like Jimmy Fallon, I'm sure he'll grow old, or, you know, perhaps he just finds it comical.
We've
in a different way.
In on it. We've all done things where if you were a fly in the wall from a former self watching yourself, you'd be like, what have you become?
Absolutely.
Like laughing at your boss's joke that was completely flat, but you know you need to stay in their good graces because the problem solution is, okay, I have anxiety around interactions and I want to stay in their good graces. So the solution is, okay, I'm going to sell myself out and laugh at one of the corniest cliches. Like somebody, I'm not using any of them, I'm just, in general, I'm sure some listeners can appreciate that they've kind of poured themselves out in interactions where they wouldn't have normally acted a certain way just because they don't want to fall in the crosshairs of a superior. And it pays dividends to stay on their good side. And you play the game a little bit too, right? Like, yeah, there's a reason I was like a NFL wide receiver-esque diva with my teaching job. I pulled the shit I pulled, Nate, but because I was like immodestly one of the better teachers at the school, like I was able to get away from it, like with it. I never showed up for my duties. I parked like an asshole, showing up like a minute before class start, and I would leave a minute after class ended. I was not Des Bryant. I guess I said wide receiver, but Marshawn Lynch at media Super Bowl availability. I'm just trying not to get fined.
So like, good that no one can question you. Yeah, no, I get that.
And I'm not saying I was so good. I just, you know, come on, dude. Like,
what did you do in the summers?
I came up to Montana, and when my parents were still alive, like, fixed the place up, took care of them, and, you know, picked the dog shit up in the yard.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've reached that age where we're
got out of the Phoenix heat
doing the work that our parents used to do for us.
My dad never taught me any hard man skills because he grew up in the Great Depression and then Navy, and he just never wanted to live hard scrabble again. And the result of that was he just always had his guy. He had a guy named Luigi, who was this guy from like North Africa, and he would come and just do any kind of maintenance work we needed. And that's stuff that I should have been, I'm not blaming him. I could have been taught that. And now there's this channel like where this guy is like giving you hand-me-down dad skills on YouTube, or just like any kind of thing like electricity, plumbing, all of that stuff I've learned from YouTube, and I'm yet to electrocute myself. And I'm keeping my finger in the dam as far as like operating a 117-year-old 9-room former boarding house, you know, that's with a foundation like a listing cruise ship.
Back to Luigi. What is your feeling on migrant labor in America?
Oh, wow, we're getting heavy on that one. Well, I think that it's incredibly important for the economy. It's a net positive, speaking economically, but culturally, I think that there can be an unintended consequence of creating parallel societies. And this country is very hard to adjust to when you're coming from another country with its mores and values, and you're stepping into a place that may not be so welcoming but still needs you. And so what you do is you end up surrounding yourself with people that are not only like-minded but speak the same language, have the same cultural values and norms, and consume the same music, movies, gossip, everything, and you end up in your own silo.
I agree with you.
Like, we need liaisons.
And that feels more like in Montana. Here's my experience. Like, I don't have the cosmopolitan experience you do, Chris, and I mean that Honestly.
Well,
like,
I am wearing fur at the moment.
Yeah, and a Winnipeg Blue Bombers hat, which is that's pretty cool.
How did you know? Okay, so you're off by the second half of that reference. It's the Winnipeg Jets.
Oh, no,
if you were to name the big four leagues, and obviously the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is the CFL, so it's not the big four. But big four being NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. If you were to name the 120 odd teams from the big four leagues, I would put money. Like, Winnipeg Jets are probably going to come in at the bottom. With the list, conversely, starting with, like, the Lakers, the Yankees, the Cowboys.
Oh, I actually saw this list recently.
Like, who's the most... The Chicago Blackhawks or Detroit Red Wings would be number one for hockey, right?
On city size, Winnipeg is one of the 5 smallest markets in all 4 major sports.
Yeah, and it's because it doesn't really have suburbs. Like, the city is the city versus the idea. Think about... Los Angeles City is only like 2.8 million people, but the city limits are funky. You have to look at metropolitan LA. If you include the Inner Empire, it's like 18 million people. And it really doesn't stop. If you drive from Phoenix to LA, the city starts like shortly after you're getting into California. You cross over to Colorado, and like you have, you go to Indio and the big wind farms, and then you're pretty much like pretty soon you're getting into LA.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, yeah, so city limits, Winnipeg is Winnipeg. Like, it's 800,000 people and there's no suburbs. And it's Canadian Shield, right? And Lake Winnipeg, right outside of the city. And mosquitoes the size of sparrows in 9 months of winter. Not like winter, like, oh, we had a dusting and the city shut down. Like, if Dallas were to get... It is... The city, I think, has similar weather to, like, Novosibirsk. Like... And Russia, that took me a minute to try to think how to pronounce that, like Siberia.
I prefer Nizhny Novgorod.
Nizhny Novgorod. Suka Blitz.
Or Shatka from Risk. No, absolutely. And I feel like people need to familiarize themselves with all things Canada as it becomes a place where, the climate is getting warmer up there and the economy and our country is in flux. I think it's going to be an interesting opportunity for, economics as well as tourism. And it's just a place that Americans aren't that familiar with.
The United States has like every climate zone, and we have such a low percentage of people compared to other countries that have passports. If they're going to go somewhere, it's going to be somewhere that isn't like similar. Even though Canada has its different biomes, you've got, Victoria is basically like a rainforest, not a tropical one, but it's technically a rainforest. And then you're going up to like, the Arctic Circle, and then over to the Maritimes, which are a lot like Maine. The middle of the country, it's just, think Fargo weather. And that's, you've got basically only eight cities. I don't know. I don't know why Americans wouldn't want to visit Canada more. I've seen a lot of it. It's a beautiful country. Almost everybody there is super friendly. That old gag, like, oh, hey, how you doing there? That's fucking true.
No, Toronto is like 25 or 30% of the population of Canada, the greater metropolitan area with Hamilton and all that. I think, you mentioned Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. I think Toronto's the 4th great city in this continent. A lot of Americans aren't going to go to Mexico City. It's maybe the biggest city, but,
yeah.
If you're going to go to someplace close in the summer, I think Toronto's would be a really interesting option, and I really want to get up there myself.
I've never even been there. I have family that live there, but it's sneaky east. Okay, so like Toronto to Winnipeg is like the difference between Fargo, North Dakota to Buffalo, New York. And like that's the nearest like next city over. But do you want to dive back into the parallel societies thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that it's jingoistic to say...
I actually have some personal experience I'd like to share. So I can't speak to, like I was saying, your cosmopolitan experiences are so vast.
Oh yeah, that's
having lived globally, I haven't really traveled our country even that much for long periods. I've been to major cities.
When you worked for Obama, I literally drove across the country with you.
No, but yeah, I've been working in them for a few months here and there. A few of these, I worked in Pittsburgh and Charleston, South Carolina, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've visited Los Angeles and New York for weeks at a time. But I haven't living in a place is
Yeah.
so much different than visiting, and you've lived in South Korea.
Yeah.
But
New
my
York
personal
City.
experience is much different. So I can't speak to that cosmopolitan societies where you're saying there's large groups of migrant workers. Like what I have seen is those non-Latino migrant workers in Montana. And it's a completely different viewpoint from yours in that they don't have large groups of people like themselves to
Are
affiliate
you talking
with.
about people from the Middle East or Africa?
I'm talking Africa. So like my person...
Where is there a diaspora? I mean, I know
Helena,
the mayor
Montana
of
has a
Helena.
large
He's from
African community.
Liberia, right?
Yeah,
Wilmot Collins?
So there's a strong refugee supporting group there that has been in place for 30 or 40 years. And they have not slowed down at any point. They've always supported that. And the current mayor of Helena, Wilmot Collins, he was a refugee from Liberia. His wife actually was the one who studied, she did like a student exchange when she was in high school and came to Helena. And
Is his wife from Liberia as well?
yes.
Okay.
And during the Liberian Civil War,
Which one? Sorry.
the one
I'm just guessing. I don't know.
there was one basically the entire decade of the 80s that got really hot and bad towards the end of the 80s, and so her host family at that point she'd gone back to Liberia, and they brought her back to Montana and basically sponsored her to come over, and she was married to Wilmot in Ghana after they fled Liberia.
Yeah.
And she ended up...
It's relatively stable for West Africa.
Yeah, it was the place where everyone fled, and so he ended up coming over after her, never having seen snow in his life, and there was not a large refugee community, but over time, the refugee community in Helena has grown, in large part due to him, but they were some of the first Africans to start a life in Helena in that way in the modern era.
Real quick aside, you know Shane Smith from Vice? The producer and the host. Vice is that, like, gonzo style journalism, but he's gone to, a million different countries. And, like, the big ones like North Korea, South Sudan, and all of these war zones. And he said that the country that he was most fearful of losing his life out of all of them, even more than North Korea, was Liberia.
It was a very, very dangerous situation. There was an injection of a lot of arms dealers at the wrong time, and you had a lot of resources on the ground that were at stake, and a lot of money at play. And Wilmot has told me a lot of stories about that, and inspired his continued civil service. He was in the civil service in Liberia.
Is it compulsory?
No, absolutely not. He was a college scholarship tennis player and was on his way to being in their State Department.
So is this your connection to the mayor of Helena? Tennis? You're pretty avid.
Oh, I wish.
Tennis, man.
He has
You're like the Kung Fu Panda of tennis, by the way.
Yeah, some of my
Weirdly
partners call me like...
Oh, sorry. That was predictable.
The Ninja Cat. But
I will say that I finally beat you in not a match, but a set last summer. And you're looking at me right now. You're burning a hole through my...
No.
Yeah. This is still pretty raw. Because it was like a decade I'd never even won a set. I'd won points here and there. But I just laid back, let the unforced errors come my way. I think you were also ice cold.
I think, and the funniest part of this is you have not played me since, because you're going to ride that forever.
Oh, for sure. My nephew, who's 18 now, I beat him in one-on-one like 6 years ago. I refused to play him. He'll probably dunk on me, fucking posterize me, end up on Instagram. All right, so Wilmot, how did you meet him, the mayor of Helena? He's the incumbent, right?
Yeah, he's in his second term. I met Wilmot.
Wilmot is how you say it?
Yeah, it was after he was elected. I actually met him, though I helped elect him to his first term. As I often do, I help folks from afar with strategic advice on those sorts of things, whether it's nonprofits or campaigns, etc. Just, maneuvering all of the information costs of the modern digital world. There's people who have expertise, and I have some areas of that, and other people, have their areas of expertise, leadership, and winning elections. It's something I'm not interested in, so I'll help them win those elections. And so I helped him. It was a strange time in 2017. He was running against a man who was actually trying to fight legal immigration to Helena, and that was not why Wilmot ran, but that's one of the reasons I was motivated to help defeat this, guy. Kind of past his prime. He'd had 4 terms and had lost sight of some of the goals of the growing communities that Montana has.
There's no term limits on governor or mayors in Montana? Well, I'm sure it's different city to city, but
I'm not aware of any term limits on municipal elections.
Be a king. I should run in Three Forks and just take the official mantle. I do call myself the Prince of the City, like Wiz Khalifa, and just run this thing like New Jack City.
And I would gladly see many people, including yourself, involved in municipal politics. Sadly, the power of municipal elections is almost nil. The city managers are in control of almost everything, and that is just a hired position by city councils. So only Billings and Missoula have professional mayors that even receive a salary beyond $25,000 a year. The mayor of Helena, I believe, makes 15 or 20.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch this one. I know who the city manager is in my town. And let me tell you, it's just like when I was public school teaching. There's 2 people you don't piss off. The guy in charge of facilities and the main secretary. They can ruin your life if you get in their crosshairs. Obviously, you play nice with your boss. But
logistics people are the unspoken controllers of this world. Like, they're not even middle managers a lot of the time. They're just in control of all of the levers. And good for them. Most of them do a very good job, and you should respect them. Refugee resettlement program in Missoula is called for the last decade. It's named Soft Landing.
Really? Soft Landing?
Soft Landing, yeah. Like you said,
there's a refugee resettlement program in Missoula. That was what I was always envisioning for the transition, making it easier and streamlining for immigrants, because we are a nation of immigrants. It's important economically, but culturally it leads to that division where there's not an acceptance of the overarching host culture, and it creates parallel societies. And I feel like that is not compatible with long-term acceptance of immigrant communities.
I understand what you're saying, and I see that there is a lot of work that needs to be done due to the environment we currently live in, where there's a lot of attempts to other and divide us. And I feel like folks from those immigrant communities find their own ways to feel more comfortable in their towns and cities, whether that's going to the local church, bowling alley, or whatever. There are small ways that they try really hard.
I think that it's important for a place like Soft Landing to help immigrants adjust to overarching culture. My example is when I lived in Yeosu, South Korea for 2 years. I could have easily skated by not trying to pick up the language, but I felt like I owe it to my host culture to at least make an attempt. And I'm not fluent in any way in Korean. I memorized about a couple hundred phrases, and I was able to read it. With help from locals and a girl I was dating at the time, I learned how to read Korean, it's called Hangul. I thought it was prudent for me to learn customs, like always taking my shoes off, entering even some restaurants you'd have to do that. And of course, accepting money with 2 hands or the right, and giving money with the right hand, learning the phrases that got me around so that I wasn't just living this other kind of, like I said, parallel life. There were so many foreigners that didn't do that. And I always thought that's a lost opportunity, but it's also sort of, I don't know if the word is rude or ungrateful, but you can't live somewhere for an extended amount of time and not at least latently pick up some of the things. And if anything, you kind of owe it to your host country that is providing you your living to just the bare minimum. My father-in-law is an immigrant from Guanajuato, Mexico, and as It's funny that I said Guanajuato, but then I said Mexico, and he's a fluent English speaker. He obviously still has an accent and everything, but he's adopted the customs. It's not fair to say my mom, adopted American customs because she's from Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's not really given. But
I don't know. Your mother grew up in a very interesting community, didn't she? Mennonite?
Yeah, she was from a Mennonite community, but that's not like Amish. They lived in the city.
German?
They spoke Plattdeutsch. Yeah, so that was her first language. So I guess that's fair to say she adopted American culture and customs. But I don't want to sound xenophobic in any way. My dance that I'm currently, I don't know, maybe successfully or unsuccessfully engaged in is that immigration is good for the economy. Parallel societies are not good for societies. And I'm not saying that there needs to be culture classes. And the original idea of the United States was what they call a melting pot, which is you lose your original characteristics and you become something new, right? I don't think that needs to happen. We can be a mixed salad where it's like, okay, your characteristics are uniquely yours and mine are uniquely mine, and they're over there, and we're all in the same bowl, but we have different characteristics that are all contributing to this plate. And I think that that's a more fair analogy than a melting pot. And that's what makes the United States spicy and interesting, that we have all these cultures coming together to represent this patchwork. I don't think we need to lose original identity of the place you came from, or your identity and all the mores and norms that you grew up with. I just think that not accepting any of the new ones from your host country is problematic because it creates resentment in people that are part of the mainstream culture if they're not open-minded. So there needs to be work from them accepting new immigrants as well. That was a question? I guess. I'm sorry.
That is a lot, and I can add my personal analysis, and that, is going to disagree a small bit in that when these folks decide to come here, if they do for work, they don't have a bunch of extra time to be learning languages, and, they're often tasked with high-paying jobs for them. It is just it's migrant work for a lot of these folks. And so I think you're talking about multiple things, and you've gotten to a really good point. That, what was the phrase you used with the
parallel society?
Parallel societies. So, there's folks who move here for short-term work or seasonal, and send all their money home. And there's folks that find a reason to stay or want to stay, or originally wanted to stay for security reasons or just to build that life. And I can't speak about those communities. Like I said, I don't have a huge cosmopolitan experience. I think in Montana, these are really good questions as communities like Bozeman depend upon these parallel societies to build them and make them work and make them affordable for, your home is a certain price in this state because people are willing to work for less. Is that fair? I don't have that answer. There's a lot of these questions in America right now, and we're sending people home or kicking them out of their home and saying.
Does Helena have the RV camps that Bozeman and Missoula do? Helena's growing. The Helena Valley. If you drive, especially coming from Great Falls, you can see how much more development there is. Not just the city kind of on the hill. It's a lot of sprawl. So it's growing, so I'm assuming there probably are. And those camps, by the way, are not immigrants. Everybody has a Montana license plate. Those ones out by Winco and Bozeman, those are all, they have Montana license plates. Not all, of course, that's a generalization, but I'd say the majority of them are.
So what I've seen in Bozeman was there is a larger concentration in a few areas there on 19th and others. In Helena, there are some people living in RVs here and there. And I've watched them get towed, and I've watched cops rip down tents, and I've, helped those folks clean up where they were trying to put those tents, and I've went to city council meetings and spoken to the city council about the Grants Pass case from 2024 that said cities can legally do that now in America without providing shelter. They can destroy what is the worst term I've ever heard, urban camping. I hate that with such a fierce passion. That is not what those folks are doing.
Quite a euphemism there.
Oh, it's just...
What would you call it instead?
Struggling to survive. I mean, I don't have a word for that, but urban camping sounds like something fun you do, where you put up a blanket over
like a tent in the backyard on a summer
urban
night.
Camping.
Yeah, watching the fireflies.
And, demonizing individuals in one way or another, we're finding the most vulnerable right now in America and attacking them. We're othering them. We are finding folks who've fallen on misfortune. The unhoused community is not a monolith, but there are a lot of disabled folks, veterans, people with mental health issues, people with addiction issues. And in this country, we choose to villainize those who are struggling the hardest. Those people who want to come here and do migrant labor. Those folks who want to come here and try to provide services that we as people will not do for the prices they will. And I personally do not think of them as economic tools. They themselves come here to work. That's their choice. I don't have views on what we define them as, if they're, migrant laborers or end up living here. But villainizing folks who are from another country or are struggling in one way or another is an easy way to not try to address the actual problems of this country. And, that's at the other end of the spectrum. And that's easy stuff that I could go on forever about, that, the wealth inequality in this country I don't want to get into because it's so frustrating. I will get furious.
Yeah,
and I want this to be more of a happy podcast.
Oh, I could see that there's been a tone change. It is like explaining how a watch works instead of just saying the time, right? It's, where do we trace it back? Is it Citizens United? Is it Teapot Dome? Is it Watergate?
I think you've hit it on the head. It's cyclical. It's not one thing. These things continue to come up. And the belief in America that we were all sold, told, pledged our allegiance to every morning as children, that's one conception of reality. What is and was reality is different. And we've come to understand that through time of our lives. And the imperfections of America are something we refuse to celebrate at the highest levels anymore, because we want to talk about the perfection of America. And that never was our grand experiment. Nothing is perfect.
Yeah.
And America never will be. Nothing will ever be perfect. But when we want to isolate and talk about what's wrong here and get rid of that, instead of focusing on, this was a grand experiment 249 years ago and has done incredible things, has done things that we can be ashamed of and proud of. Korematsu.
Well, as they say, we're the worst system out there except for all the other ones.
Well, democracy, and as conservative commentators will tell you, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Mm-hmm. And as people who probably could not get into a civics lesson beyond those two terms that they've read on, Glenn Beck or Louder with Crowder.
Yeah.
Louder with Crowder. I had a neighbor come up to me the other day, and it was a wonderful experience. He's a piano tuner. Very nice man. A little weird. There's a lot of apple picking going on in his backyard, wood chopping, a lot of mess. And he's just a very soft-spoken, wonderful, nice man. And he decided to talk to me about how Louder with Crowder had taught him all about how they're disappearing people in Ukraine and how we're not enemies with Russia and Ukraine's the problem. And I just looked at him and just,
I gotta get used to being like, okay.
No. I mean,
I wouldn't have any friends in town if I engaged like that. I hate it when people show their colors, and I want to know about that, because then I won't have any friends.
I don't know how we got to this place where speaking nonsense became okay. Like, I used to be able to talk to anybody. I felt good about that. I could walk up and have a conversation with anyone in Montana about anything.
You like sports, right?
I love sports.
Okay, sports talk in a bar.
Yeah.
People will spout off things that they heard on ESPN radio, like it was their opinion. And it's like, motherfucker, I just heard that on today's episode of, Bloviators at a Table, right? That's not yours. You're getting that, and it's just palatable enough for you to remember it, saying, so-and-so is... Tommy John surgeries are ruining baseball, and, the blah, 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 right? Like, there's no pitchers go 7 innings anymore, and you're saying 3 reasons why. And it's like, you just got that. That is now how people operate with politics. You're just being spoon-fed things. So I'm assuming Louder with Crowder guy, weird apple picker guy.
Yeah, the 24-hour news cycle, he's feeding upon these people's desire for new garbage information nonstop all the time, and using the digital age to spread this and become wealthy himself, regardless of what it causes. The misinformation, democracy is based on an informed electorate, and these people have created a misinformed group of people that, when you were speaking, all I could think of was Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, literally breaking him down one by one, how he was just regurgitating something out of a textbook. And,
that's a good callback to apples.
How do you like them apples?
Yeah.
No, and exactly, that's what I'm getting to, is like, we can all regurgitate things. Facts are one thing, but regurgitating analysis without understanding any of that, that's what Matt Damon made a wonderful point there. That's why it's an iconic scene from an iconic film.
Explain the scene for people who don't remember it or haven't seen it in a while. Matt Damon is his character, Will Hunter, is...
Hunting.
Yes, of course. I was like, Good Will Hunting was like, we're looking for goodwill. And his name is Will Hunting, and he's good. He's a genius, and of course he's an underachiever. South Boston, that trope, right? That all the Boston movies, that was the first one to start that. And he is in a bar. Boston is known for its glut of well-educated people.
They were in a Harvard bar.
They were in a Harvard bar.
So these Southie boys, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, South Boston is the poor white part of the community, and these South Boston boys took a train to go up to a Harvard bar to hit on the Harvard girls that night, and he ends up having an interaction with a
regurgitator.
Yeah, but
with a pony.
A snob, an effete snob in the finest way. Like, this man, I think, is burned in many people's memories as perfect snobbery now. Like, he has a ponytail, and just that, his nose is raised a bit.
He's the kind of guy that would boil his crabs in salt water.
I have no idea what that means, Chris.
I met some snobs once when I was in Cape Cod. That was a good word, effete, and very affected. And we had to go out to get salt water to boil. It wasn't crabs, of course, it was lobster. And they talked like they were sommeliers. You're getting your snobbery from where? And it was actually, they were just old school, old money from Cape Cod, so maybe I was wrong in the sense. But
if you want to talk about parallel societies, we have parallel societies in America. That's a wonderful example.
How about Three Forks to Bozeman?
There you go.
Yeah.
How about those folks who are living in those broken down camper vans to Pete's Hill? Like the same town.
Yeah. Up in the Bridger foothills.
And, why we've ended up in the quagmire that we have is currently there's one elected official speaking to people in a certain way about why they're having problems, and he's convinced them that it's another group of people. And, this isn't just one or the other. He's convinced numerous groups that the other groups are the problem.
So in this movie, Matt Damon dresses down the snob because he's basically saying, like, everything you're doing is just regurgitated. I know exactly what you are.
He goes from one textbook to another. So the guy asks him a question about history, and it's a deep question about the Industrial Revolution. It sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And this Will Hunting has a photographic memory as well as a 200 IQ, is a math genius being taught by the Fields Medal winner. And he goes, "Oh, so you read this book. That's why you asked me that question. Next week, you're going to read the book before that. Yeah. Next week, you're going to read the book before that, because you're just going to continue regurgitating." And the guy goes, "Well, you're going to be
taking my drive-through order
on my way to Vail." And there you go.
Kids on a ski trip.
Yeah, on our ski trip. And
so his currency in that scene, the antagonist in that scene is like, well, I don't give a fuck because guess what? Like, I'm still going to have a life in which I can afford to do something like that, and you're just going to be working. And so knowledge doesn't matter to that character. It is knowledge as a springboard to wealth.
The elitism that his knowledge is meaningful, but at the same time secondary to his superiority because of his wealth.
Yeah, fair. All right.
And, you know, as we've discussed, like, where do these problems come from? Citizens United, Teapot Dome, Watergate. I think, like I said, those are all perfect examples of the cyclical nature of the experiment of America, and we have to continue to work on it. And right now, Citizens United has put us in a hole, and, you know, it's a very tough spot to be in, that we live in a democracy, or if Republicans get mad at you, a republic, and then, you know, the courts hung us with Citizens United. That's a non-elected branch.
Do you think that people our age are more adept at being able to analyze what's going on, the ails of what's going on in the United States, compared to boomers or kids behind us?
I don't know. I
feel like we're daywalkers in a way. Like in Blade, he's both human and vampire. We were able to still have the childhood of latchkey kids or Gen X, even boomers, where we were a little bit free range, but then we also have the ability to be adept at technology. For instance, like I teach an adult ed class to boomers in technology, and it took us an hour and a half to get signed into Google Classroom the other day. And it's kind of unfair, and I do feel sympathetic to them because technology is advancing so fast. It's even frustrating, and I'm not in any way saying that I'm Mr. Tech Guy, but I have ingrained in me, because I grew up when I grew up, an ability to take things for granted, which is completely foreign to them, like opening a new tab. And then Gen Zs, Xennials, and all this behind us, Gen Alpha, barely know how to use a computer, but could throw together a meme on on a meme maker and then throw it on Instagram and get 50 likes within an hour. And, grew up on a screen. And I think we have that, like, we're a little bit of a mix between boomer and alpha. Kind of like how when I lived in Arizona, I thought it was always, okay, it's what Arizona is what happens when California and Texas have a baby. So our generation is what happens when boomers and Gen Alpha, like, we are a melange of that. And I think that it gives us an ability to make these pronouncements that we're making today.
Oh, I 100% agree that our generation thinks that we know best, and we do.
We also are responsible for anything Zuckerberg has got his hands on.
Yeah, no, we are the problem and the solution. But no, I feel like our generation is hopefully not missing out on putting our footprint on society. I feel like we have something to contribute, and the boomers are still in control, and this is their country, and the new generations are stepping up and kind of taking over.
Did you know that more men in their 70s voted for Kamala Harris than men in their 20s? I could fact check that, but men over 75?
I did not know that. I knew there was large age distinctions. I knew that 30...
I should say white men.
I knew 30 to 50 was very problematic, the age group, which was us. Like, millennials voted for the wrong person. I will say that. There was a large group of people that...
Well, if you follow the stock market in early April 2025, that would certainly be not a jump for you to say that.
He's making a lot of really astute financial decisions that seem to be wrecking all of our generation's 401ks.
Well, good thing I don't have one. Yeah, I got retirement somewhere.
You need to find a way to get vested into teachers' retirement. That's a pension.
I do have that.
That's the only the gold standard.
I have this property and a Ford F-150. Other than that, I'm fucked.
I think a lot of people in our generation
and I got Boo Boo the dog
are kind of there, where they are not depending upon one version or another. I mean, everyone wants to say that Social Security won't be there, but it's like, after what we've been through in the last 15 years, how smart is it to throw your money in the stock market over and over again? It gets dumped out and pump and dumped by something new. Now we got
Sounds
the cryptocurrency doing the pump and dump and Dogecoin and all this garbage. What were you going to say?
I just said that sounds hot because I have the maturity level of middle schooler.
The pump and dump. It's a complicated financial mechanism that Chris would like to explain, but we're not going to go into the X-rated portion of that show.
I could tell you about $5 parlays, but actually not even that. I just asked the chat bot about the best prop bets in the NBA that day, and I don't have the balls to go over $20 at a time, so that's my wheelhouse.
I would say
April 2025.
I will give my one piece of financial advice, and that is the state of New Jersey published the report on how much revenue they generated from gambling. And straight bets, there was zero revenue for the state of New Jersey. So people broke even on straight bets. On parlay bets, the state of New Jersey raked in hundreds of millions of dollars.
I don't do parlays. I do money lines or locks. Like, let's say, okay, so the NBA playoffs are coming up. If an away team steals a game, like game one of an away, right?
They never win game two.
They're not going to win two, so I'll just put it. You got to go for it because they all they got to win is one away, and they can win the series if they win their home games. So.
I will admit my failures in that. Pridefully,
many, of course.
Many, but this is the only one I'll admit.
That tracks.
Pridefully and also mockingly of myself, I can say I have never successfully been able to use that sports gambling machine in the casinos. I have tried.
It's because the Montana Tavern Association doesn't give Vegas odds. They get their beak wet by taking like half a point off. So you'll look at what event is coming. Okay, that Monday game, right? Houston versus they played Florida. I don't know what the line was, but let's say it was -3.5 for Florida. It would be -4. You don't get the same odds. And often, as sports betting goes, you'll get fucked by that, like half a point. It all goes to the Butte Mafia.
Well, the legislature is currently working on this. The vendor actually they used seems to be having some issues, and there may have been some, yes, as you say, some deals done behind closed doors that made a lot of individuals money, not people gambling. And, it's a classic smoke-filled room kind of. Politics gets a bad name, but for a reason it does. There's a lot of folks in it for themselves. Yeah, this gambling.
It's
sports,
dirty.
I'm
actually kind of glad that we can't have it on our phones in Montana. I would probably develop a serious addiction. I'm not kidding. Like if it's right in your pocket, I have to walk my ass down to the bar and place a bet. And it's honestly it's a little bit of a hobby. You get something to do in March when it's kind of the doldrums, or like in the dog days of summer, something. But it is incredibly stupid and it's a waste of money. I keep track of all my bets and I'm down.
There's something to be said about the politics of vice. People are going to gamble. People are going to use substances. If a society can correctly regulate that to protect people from themselves, as well as create taxation from this wasted source like alcohol, tobacco, firearms, marijuana, these things people want to spend money on that don't provide an end of anything other than, they're a vice. They were largely illegal for a long time in one way or another. And so society is going to draw out some positive. And in that, the negative that they create, whether, that's tobacco causing cancer. So what do? We tax it and put that back into the healthcare system. And the same thing with gambling. Like, we're lucky that our gambling system is so stupid. Like you said, they give bad odds. Or, it might be more interesting for people like you and me, but it's more just like it's a hobby, luckily. And I mean, there are people who do stupid things and make stupid bets, and good for them. Hopefully they have that money to waste, but they probably don't.
The modern GOP has still a real entanglement with evangelism, or no?
The modern GOP,
which is the Trump party,
married itself to evangelism in the 90s.
Right.
The religious right, and I can't remember the man's name, but, he came in with Newt Gingrich, and they used that.
Pat Robertson.
That was one of them. Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson. Yeah. There was another one. I'm trying to think. No, he's a non-elected official, but so they married themselves to the religious right in name only, while they continue to be, just as corrupt as any elected official. But yeah, it was a successful maneuver because, there's not one thing that's the religious right. There's all sorts of Christian religions in America.
But the one that really draws the most water is the evangelical church, which is your boilerplate like Bible belt.
Politically, evangelicals are largely a monolith. Yeah. But then you start drawing in Catholics are not. That's
right, because Biden was a Catholic, but he was pro-abortion.
That's one of the really unique facts in political science, that you can't win a presidential election without winning Catholics. That is shown to be the case for 60 or 80 years in America. Really? However Catholics vote, they elect the president. But
they're the bellwether?
That's a perfect name for it. It's not a yes or no, like you need to win them. They're a bellwether for the shape of American societies, like what we look like, because they're everywhere, they're everyone, and they're a unique snapshot. So
my parents
were a great term.
My parents, I'm not going to belabor this, but my mom, when she first moved to the United States in the 70s, she worked for the Nixon campaign. My parents voted Republican, I think, up till 96, because the Republicans, especially in Montana, or at least on a national scale, weren't always, like, Christ, Nixon came up with the EPA.
Yeah, Clean Air and Water Act were passed under him by Democratic Senate and Congress, but he signed those bills.
And then from 96 on, my parents voted Democrat, because I think they were sort of like one ticket issue voters. It was environment, and the Republican Party, I might be wrong, were certainly more environmentally friendly until whatever happened, and it's completely flipped now.
Yeah, we've seen lots and lots of flips between these two parties. I mean, the Democratic Party itself, we see those flips in that a lot of the people that are elected officials and donors to the Democratic Party are wealthy. And
a little context here, Nate was it president or chairperson of the Montana Democrats in 2008?
I was state director of students for Barack Obama in 2007 and 2008, and worked for Barack Obama's campaign in 2008
before you went to the woods.
I always go back to the woods where I was born, which is true. We'll get into that another day.
You're like Thoreau.
He was born wealthy and a little yuppie.
Oh, okay. Then he did his 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't see you for like 7 years. You were just out there like Nell, just coming up with your own language. I did come visit you up there, and it was amazing what you had done. But I think that you burned the candle a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and editorialize here, at both ends during that campaign. And then it was such I don't know if letdown's the right word, but elation when he gets elected in 2008. And I worked for a day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for that campaign, and it sucked so much that I fucking moved. I moved to New York City and got back with an ex because I didn't want to work for the campaign anymore.
It was not what we expected, me or you. Let's put it that way.
The Obama presidency?
I was speaking of the campaign. Campaigning itself is grueling and not what you think. You see one thing on television, and that is not the work you're doing.
I don't think that there's a glamorous perception of campaigning. Like knocking on doors and having them...
Well, yeah, I mean, from a young age, you think, oh, well, it's like, it's a fun busy.
Fun busy.
And, I mean, there's points where it can be...
Fun busy is like, oh, we have a talent show today that I'm putting together.
But more, it's like...
That's fun busy.
You're working so hard that trauma bonds are created. Like, sort of situation.
Yeah. No, I took this.
But no...
you routinely worked like 18-hour days. I remember... Didn't you have I
worked 100 days straight of 14 hours a day minimum. There were numerous work through the middle of the night.
Hence going to the woods.
And I mean, we did something that people had told us, especially from the boomer generation, that we couldn't do, which was elect an African-American president. And you wanted to get to the point of asking me, like, how I felt about, those 8 years, having given so much of myself to that. And Barack Obama was an incredible person. He was a transformational moment, but that moment didn't stick. And look where we are.
It's probably pretty hard to keep that momentum going.
But no, we had a whiplash back into racism in this country.
And it's not an overcorrection because that's saying that something's needing to be corrected.
No,
but
it's whiplash. It's horrible.
Yeah. The pendulum completely the other way. It's just nice when you see old clips. There was just such a sophistication and an intellect and an articulation. I mean, his biggest scandal was the tan suit, which at my mother's service, I went out and got a tan suit as a nod because I admire Barack Obama, but I mean, he did drone some weddings, that's for sure. But that was his biggest scandal. Here's a challenge. What's something that Trump has done that you approve of? Like, I'm going to go ahead and say, if anybody's going to change daylight saving times to standard or one or the other, he's such a wild card that he would do that. And I'd be like, I'm behind that. I'd say most people are behind that.
Well, I can't speak in concrete terms like that. If you want a positive out of Donald Trump from me, I can speak theoretically. And what I can say is there is a term in an outdated understanding of economics from 19th century Germans called accelerationism.
Was this on last night's reading assignment?
No, I actually do my own analysis.
That's
accelerationism.
Incredible. You pulled that out. Say it again.
Accelerationism.
No. What was that from? I just want to make sure. Show me your palms. You don't have some
19th century German. I don't know what I said. I can't. It wasn't scripted, but. He is creating a moment where he may be the lever for this country to do the right thing because he's doing so many wrong things. That's all I can give him.
And your face right now says, let's pivot to the NBA playoffs.
Well, I think we all have opinions on this, but everyone is sick and tired of feeling so frustrated, and like, let me tell you, folks,
it's chaotic. It's how you feel on an airplane with turbulence.
I don't read the news on a daily basis anymore. I understand how you're feeling. This is terrible, and
let's say what you really think.
It's your turn. I've done my decades in politics. It's your turn to get involved.
Yeah, I have checked out a little bit on wringing my hands and giving myself conniptions. It's just, I'm like, okay. How are the Phillies this year?
But we can take a breath.
What are we going to do with Kevin Durant this summer?
Responsibility to the next generation too. We can't just give up. So I'm taking a breath.
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody take a beat.
Yeah.
But no, you can't just go, this sucks. I'm fine. And like, as a white man, is this hurting me personally? I can't think of a way that these policies are negative towards white men. That's not okay, though. Those are the people that need to go, what is this going to do to this country?
Well, it's as a precedent, not conceding an election is that you don't have to be a white man to say that's a really bad precedent to set. Am I going to benefit from Trump's xenophobia and policies that benefit, I guess, straight white men?
It could be.
For sure.
Like, that's the thing. I can't say...
But I'm just so much against the precedent.
He's not attacking me.
Well, yeah, you're not in his orbit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in, Robert Kennedy's orbit because I eat potato chips and margarine, but...
Do you take chainsaws to beached whales?
Oh, many a Sunday.
Good thing we don't live. We're landlocked. He has been, speaking of wild cards, I don't know where I land on him at all. Because he's moderate 1 minute and then anti-vax the next and then in bed. With this administration, I don't know where I land on him. I mean, I like Curb Your Enthusiasm.
He's unqualified regardless of who he is. He's unqualified for his job.
Which cabinet member are you discussing?
Kennedy.
Yeah, no, that's a joke, a bad one. And we have Linda McMahon runs education. She's of WWE, fake fighting ilk, which, by the way, not a knock. We all grew up with wrestling. Who was your favorite pro wrestling? Were you a Goldberg guy, or did you like Sting? Did you get NWO what they were driving for? Did you understand? I've been trying to dress like Hollywood Hogan, NWO Hollywood Hogan, for like the last 3 Halloweens. I have a bag of swag that it would take to make this costume, and I never pulled the trigger on it. I think I'm going to dress up as Al Borland this Halloween, but as is my wont, I never dress up for Halloween, but I'm always prepared for it, and my wife is constantly disappointed. In other ways than just me dropping the ball on Halloween. What did you do after the Obama election? And why did you go to the woods?
I went to the woods to live deliberately. As Thoreau said. It's exhausting, man. You know, being involved with politics for as long as I was just wore on me, and needed a break, and had an opportunity, so I took it. Enjoyed, coming back and forth from living in rural America and out.
Kalaka, was it?
No, the exact opposite corner.
Eureka. Up by almost British Columbia, right?
Yep.
Lake Koocanusa, I remember.
Port of entry into Canada, Port of Roosevelt. Roosevelt is 8 miles away, and, go to Canada once a year, because they have...
ketchup chips.
Their grocery stores are kind of funny, but no, they had fresh seafood.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
At a decent price in British Columbia. Some calamari and other things. So,
how long were you there? This is concurrent with my time living in Phoenix, I believe. Or New York and then Korea, then Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, I moved up 2012, end of 2012, 2013. I worked and would come back and go back up there. And, I lived in Bozeman for a few months here and there. But it was, 4 or 5 years of kind of stepping away. But my parents both got sick but survived. And so I was taking care of them here and there, helping them get through that when they needed it. There was a lot to that I didn't decide. It just happened, like that, the caretaking part and other pieces to it where, financially I could live away. My parents, our family had some property and a place on it. So I didn't have as many bills, so I could step away. But, I worked hard and got to make those choices, and then, moved back and had some interesting work. But
you have a law degree. Are you using that anymore? You didn't take the bar, did you?
No. I have no interest in that area.
Why'd you get a law degree then?
Because I was 22 years old and I went to law school. It wasn't really well thought out.
I probably would have changed my course of study in retrospect, but I'm not ashamed of my path. I've made some pretty bad decisions and pissed away some relationships, and I really wish that I didn't spend my 20s partying my balls off. But, man, I laughed a lot, and I got to see some pretty cool stuff. Kind of like the grasshopper not preparing for winter, and all the ants are out there doing all the work, they're all set, and then he relies on them to get by. And our friend Josh is one of the ants, because he's been
working since he was like 14 years old, nonstop. He's the hardest working man in show business, I call him.
He's done pretty well for himself.
He's earned everything he's done. Absolutely. I mean, he's had hard jobs, worked his way up the ladder, and good for him. When I have to work a 9 to 5 schedule, or often it's more than that, it's hard. I don't know how people do that.
Yeah.
Making your own hours, being your own boss is pretty incredible too. It's got its own struggles.
It is difficult in its own ways. The kitchen is right there, so keeping your weight at bay. Seriously, that's why I'm a 1 meal a day guy, because I can't. If I even get in the kitchen for anything, I'm going to be 1,000 calories down the road. That's how I crept my weight back up originally. I put on more than the COVID-19. Let's just be. Yeah.
The freshman 15 and the COVID 29.
Yeah. If that, or that's being
generous.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Working from home, you have to police yourself. I have to, even though I might be in, Under Armour, like decked out, if I'm having a Zoom call for something for my MSU position, I get dressed like I'm going to work. You gotta police. But what would you do different in your path if you could?
I'd start working when I was 14.
Go the Josh Mosby route?
Not the entire time, but, sock away some money early. Like, it's, like you said, goofing around, doing this or that, playing high school sports, like, that was unpaid labor. I should have been working a job. Like, that was a waste of time. Like,
okay, push back not real heavily, but I was listening to an interview about a person who was an Olympic figure skater, which is a skill you really, unless you're going to be coaching it later, it's sunk. You're not going to be at that level, or gymnast, far into your life, right? But the skills you learn in pursuing that are translatable for other things. And I feel that way about, I'm not teaching anymore, really. I do teach adult ed a little bit here and there, but for 2 months out of the year. But my 15 years off and on teaching experience, a lot of that is translatable into running my business and in my interactions with people and what I'm doing now, which is trying to build a podcast following.
I agree completely that high school sports are part of the education process in school. They teach you discipline. They teach you that ability for teamwork, but you could learn that in a lot of areas that don't waste so much time, and you don't have to deal with overbearing coaches. Literally, you got to be in the weight room all summer. No, you should be working a job or doing something interesting with your summer, not in the weight room for your football coach, wasting your time. You could be in a weight room at any point, or go, cut some trees down, work for the Forest Service, do something interesting, not waste that labor.
There's a lot of money in school districts spent on athletics too.
Hey, Eric, Chris, you want a podcast-worthy moment?
Hopefully this is our teaser.
People want to talk about trans athletes. High school athletics are an educational experience. Everyone should have access to that. And for me, it's absurd that we want to exclude anyone. It's an educational experience. If people want to be a part of that, people that we have the scores of high school football games on the front page of sports papers is pathetic.
It should be test scores, but that's not sexy.
No. Bread and circuses, but that's fine. But that's professional sports. Putting these kids out there and putting them on the line, that is not appropriate. Okay. First of all, you're elevating these football kids up. What about the kids doing well? Like you said, putting the test scores out there. The kids doing music. They don't get their own page. This is absurd.
In my town, we got top 5 in the class, whatever we're in C basketball tournament. And sometimes they win. And they'll have a car parade for whenever they get back into town in the middle of the night. People honking their horns and everything. When the girl who won state from this town in speech and debate came back to town, I'm not hearing any horns honking for that. And that was state first place.
And they didn't care if she was trans or he was trans, because it wasn't high school football. And that's what I just want to be clear. I support trans folks doing anything. And high school sports, telling them that they can or cannot do that, to me, is showing our misplaced priorities in this country. That's an educational experience. If they want to do that, good for them.
It's an issue that was put out there that is so minimal that became so immense to the national conversation that it's almost like the left fell for the banana in the tailpipe there and took the bait. And really, it's less than 1% of 1% is that, and it's the national conversation for entire news cycles. So if there's going to be a rebranding of the Democratic Party, I think they're going to have to move forward without talking about that.
I don't know what they do as a rebranding. They are an inclusive group of folks, and they've missed out on being inclusive in a lot of ways. And, populism is negative and positive, and Trump took advantage of the negatives. And there are ways to be inclusive as a Democratic Party that include those folks who are struggling, of all kinds of people.
But making it one of the pillars of the Democratic Party, I think, is why they lose elections. Because people that are struggling don't want to hear about that.
Like you said, they responded to people being attacked, which is, it's hard to fault people for being supportive of the most vulnerable. But
it's not, you're not going to win elections making that the highlight of your platform. And I'll tell you another thing.
But who made it the highlight? Corporate media. Because it sold TV ads.
And Trump drummed it up.
It's all just nonsense noise. And like I said, without an informed electorate, how do we have a democracy?
Well, we have a 5th grade reading level as an average, if not lower, in this country.
And I haven't lived.
And dude, if you're talking between,
we're very educated in Montana. Between
Gen Z, Alpha, and Boomers, walking between both, I think I have a nice way. I am in no way a Philistine, but I'm certainly not, I would even say, an academic. The last book I read was about the 1990s New York Knicks.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
It was an awesome book. And before that, the Slash biography. Topic. Okay?
Yeah.
I've read For Whom the Bell Tolls, but after that I was like, okay, I did it. I've read a doorstop of a book, and I don't know how many more I've got in me like that. But so what I'm trying to say is, I'm by no means, I think, an arrogant coastal elitist, but I'm certainly not somebody, going to a Friday night race and
losing your hearing, yeah.
Let's get wheels down on this. I think it's been a nice chat, and I hope that there's a lot more to it. What are you going to be doing through the rest of this 3 years and 10 months?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I understand that we're in new waters for a lot of people. I mean, the first term of this guy was one thing, and it felt like we pushed back and held the line, and it doesn't feel like we're doing that now, right? It feels like we're losing real bad, and we are. It's only April, and
I didn't go to the hands off. For instance, I didn't even know that it was happening, and I don't even know if I would have gone, dude. I feel I'm pretty progressive still, but I don't know if the party has moved away from me or if I've moved away from the party. But
I don't know that they have a lot to say for Montana. That's for sure. I mean, we are a unique brand of folks who want to live on our own and not get stepped on, but take care of each other when we can. And that's my advice, is find a way to get some peace through all this nonsense, turn it off for a while here and there. But at the same time, you do have a responsibility. We all do continually. And it's finding those places to inject yourself that's meaningful, and then being able to separate yourself. It's not your life. It doesn't need to be. It is some people's lives, are dependent upon what we do over the next 6 months. So take that for what it is. But you have a responsibility to yourself to take care of yourself. But you can't just say, this is what I get really tired of from the left. People doing well in our generation is, I'm going to take care of my own. I'm going to make sure my family's doing good, and I can't worry about the rest. That's not acceptable. You do have to be involved. You have to find ways to meaningfully engage. You don't have to make it your life. But for people like myself, who it has been a large part of my life, it's very frustrating to have so many people not engage in any way whatsoever and think they're doing okay because they're just taking care of their nuclear family. That's not okay. That's not enough.
You need people to look more macro.
You need to
build
community.
Of those, I'll be honest.
You need to find a way to build community.
We might have aged out of it though, dude. I'm not feeling like I want to wait in a 3-hour line to go watch a politician speak right now.
Politicians will not get us out of this. We will get us out of this. We need to build those movements and harshly judge politicians when they put their name out there in the primaries that come ahead. I mean, we have one option ahead. I'm not speaking to anybody else who's voting for Trump or those people.
But that's half of us. You're really going to cut out.
It's 27% of Americans voted for him, and in the primary, 8% of Americans voted for him in the Republican primary. I'm not cutting out those people.
I feel like it's so. I think I'm in a position where I can say it definitely feels like a lot more than half. But actually, even in Three Forks, 4 out of 10 people, at least in town here, voted progressively.
Okay, I'll do the quick math for you. So in America, 50% of people vote. Largely because of voting issues, the states make it hard for people, largely of, poor and non-white, to vote. And, other reasons people aren't engaged. So 50% of Americans vote. Let's say probably not even half, like a little bit more than half of that voted for Trump. 27% of all Americans voted for him.
So that's 76 million people.
In the general election, and we're talking about, half of that is Florida and Texas. So, if you've been to those places, they're really fun, really humid. And I think it warps their brains. No, just kidding. But 26 or 27% of the American electorate voted for him. And what's really sad about our system is that the general election is not a choice for most because it comes to the primary. So, of all the people who vote in the general election, a very small percentage of them vote in the primary. So they've made the choice for us. So on our side, those primaries moving ahead, we need to ask those tough questions. You want to come back to Obama, we looked for him to be the leader and solve the problems, and he was hope and change. Well, he didn't have the answers when the economic crisis hit in 2008. He was certainly
hamstrung by
the recession.
Well, and also
the depression.
He tried to work too much with the other side. What he suffered from was catharsis in getting things done in his true vision.
I mean, and that's speaking in a negative manner. It's positively, Mitch McConnell went out of his way to make his life hell and to make government not
even if
function.
It's good for the country. Oh, but it came from him? Fuck him.
Well, Obama, he attempted to solve the problems in a way that would have worked for many people before him. And Mitch McConnell and others made the choice to say no, big money. So, he did not adapt quickly enough. And I was in those rooms and had those discussions. We knew we had made mistakes in 2009 that we were going to have a very hard time to dig out of. And this wasn't,
Can you name one?
Yes. Letting the Tea Party take control of the narrative on April 15th, 2009, and run his first term into the ground with the Heritage Foundation, Mitch McConnell, and big money.
Fair.
And Valerie Jarrett, who was his communications director in a room in February 2010, said to us, we know we made mistakes by letting them take control of the narrative, by not being on the offensive, by not getting things done more quickly. It took us 16 months to get healthcare reform passed in the version it did, which, has given 30 million people healthcare, but it wasn't even close to it was an okay solution, Band-Aid to a horrible problem of the American healthcare system. So, we lost a lot of battles before we put one on the board. And we lost the tide by then. And, his...
Well, yeah, the 2010 red wave, right? That was...
Yeah, and then when he won re-election in 2012, what are Obama's greatest accomplishments outside of, 3 or 4 major policy things? It's winning the elections themselves and holding back the tide of this big money in politics. Him actually winning those elections is one of the most impressive things that he accomplished. And
how about the intangibles, like the fact that he had a lot of respect to the office? His reputation preceded him. Globally, we were back on everybody's good side. When I would get into a cab in Korea, the cab drivers would always say, Obama number 1.
Let me be clear.
Michelle?
And I heard, as I said, I don't really engage right now. But I've been listening to a little bit more and engaging a little bit more. I've been a little more excited when I saw AOC out on the stump, when I saw
with Bernie,
Tim Walz standing up to Musk, and even Cory Booker's filibuster over nothing was nice.
That was awesome.
It was awesome, but we didn't do anything. But it was leadership that we needed, and so I've been engaging a little more. And I think all of us need to find those positives. But Obama said, this was just 2 days ago. He goes, Not a joke.
Do you have an Obama in your quiver, by the way?
No, I absolutely...
It's a lot of vocal fry.
Let me be clear. No. And he started with that, so I was dying laughing, and everyone was laughing in the audience. He was giving a speech, and sit down. And he goes, no, hold on. He makes them all quiet up. Gets serious. He goes, imagine if I had done one of these things.
Yeah, I saw that.
If I had fired a Department of Justice official who had followed the regulations on whether a person convicted of a misdemeanor or violent felony, i.e. partner or family member assault, and this person is Mel Gibson. A Department of Justice official had said Mel Gibson does not get his Second Amendment gun rights back because he's guilty of a violent crime. She was fired for that. Imagine if I had done that, Obama says.
Are you talking about his Scottish accent in Braveheart?
No,
he did make
I'm
Apocalypto
about partner or family member assault, which is very, very bad. And I just
with that Russian.
I don't know. Yeah. I read this in an art. I don't read TMZ. I don't know the actual history of it. I don't read TMZ as if it's a newspaper.
Are you saying I do?
I'm looking right at you with guilty
Well, yeah,
eyes.
there's nowhere else to look. They always, in their defense, their number one issue, or number one skill, TMZ, is breaking the news of anybody dying first.
You know, and
they are crushing that corner of media.
I can give TMZ far more compliments than Donald Trump, and I can say they publish unedited video footage so that it's not a lie. They will publish, and it can be somewhat interesting and pertaining to reality in modern day. I mean, a lot of it is, garbage celebrity videos, but...
Well, they gotta fill time, right?
But...
Between Gene Hackman
imagine...
and whenever the Golden Girl dies again. I think they're all gone now, but...
That Gene Hackman thing, actually, I followed that very little, but I read a couple... It sounds very... It's like, I would listen to a podcast on that. Yeah. What is going on?
I spoke about it in my last one with Trish, and mostly because she lived in a shack for 7.5 years, and there's bound to be mice. And matter of fact, their first shack that they lived in was rife with them, and I was like, I am so frightened by hantavirus myself, which is how ultimately his wife passed, and then she passed first, and he's walking around in a stupor because he's super beyond like cognition at that point. And how sad, and that he didn't have anybody check on him in a week. God, that's a little peek beyond the curtain on his family life. But he was in Royal Tenenbaums, so
America needs to take a look at itself and take care of its elders.
Yeah, I think that I did what I was supposed to do, and it was the most traumatic thing in my life.
Kudos to you, Chris. And everyone who knows you knows you worked really hard and selflessly and gave back all that you were given.
Yeah.
Our parents give us so much, and it's rather quick that they ask us to give it back sometimes. Like, we are taking care of babes again sometimes.
Yeah. It's not something I would ever wish on anybody, but I had no more fastball. I pitched my 9 2/3 innings, and I'm at peace with the effort I gave. I'm not at peace with my lack of patience at times, but you have to forgive yourself. I haven't forgiven myself for some of my lack of patience because it was overwhelming. But
when people are in the states they get in when they need caregiving and need to be in hospitals, it's very hard to reason with them and to keep them calm and fed and healthy, and do things for them that they've never had anyone do for them. They get very frustrated. It's very hard to stay calm and not get frustrated at folks who won't let you help them and maybe hurting themselves.
Or just you're tapped. So I would just say this, and I'm not asking for any kind of forgiveness from what happened. I would just say make sure that I had hospice and I had help, but it still wasn't enough. And just make sure that you have a team to come in there. And if you need relief, don't feel afraid to ask for it. But let's put I can see the tarmac, wheels are down. Let's end on a higher note than a family member experience like that. I don't know how to transition out of that, but I do want to say thank you for coming to the studio here, which is the Gallatin Valley room in my boarding house. There used to be a railroad here.
I love this place, by the way. I don't know if you know that. It is so cool.
Well, when you traveled for that state director of the the Democratic Party, this was sort of your ports of I don't know, not in a storm, but you came over, you had an open invite, and I remember my dad saying once, okay, so Nate's coming over, I better do some grocery shopping.
That's right.
How many steaks are we going through tonight?
That's right. No, and it really, like, it was a wonderful place to get to see all of you, but it was a port in the storm, because I could have made it home sometimes, but I just wanted to stop here and not be in that. You know, even sometimes if you're just 50 miles away from your town or 100 miles, and you can have a stop over and feel comfortable, and like, you know, you're somewhere else, the problems are outside of that place, and you have people who want to chat about something, and yeah, it was a very nice port in the storm.
Did you have your knowledge bank of the best bathrooms across the state on your road trips?
Oh, without a doubt.
I know exactly what you mean. Like the town pump in Big Timber.
Ooh.
You know that one? Beautiful.
There aren't that many.
Russian bath.
There aren't that many.
No. I did a road trip through, I drove from Winnipeg back to Montana, but going through like Saskatchewan and everything. And it is shocking how much of a difference. You think U.S. Canada interchangeable? No. And the one glaring difference is the United States interstate system. Rest stops are wonderful for the most part, and they're clean. Canada, I might as well have been in Nicaragua. I'm not kidding. What, it's like that old joke. Oh, they put a lock on the bathroom. What, are they afraid somebody's going to break in and clean it?
Yeah, no, that's generally the experience once you're off. Yeah, the interstate highway system. It's hit or miss.
Well, I'm glad that you stopped by. I don't know if we're gonna golf today, but we did get a good bullshitting session in. One of the things I do best. I cannot keep up with you as far as your ability to wax poetic about all the ills and all the successes from politics to our society, but I do know that I treasure you as a friend, and I'm glad that you came through, and I'm glad that we've reconnected, and that you're out of the woods, and
I may go back. We'll see how the next year turns out. But thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, that was Nate Kosted, everybody. Nathan Kosted, thanks for coming on, you fucking maniac. Now,